Hello and welcome back to the SNS Football Podcast. Back again, we've had a little bit of a break away from it, but we're back again to go through all the transfer news because a fair bit has happened since we left you, but also we are going to talk about the big news today of Frank Lampard sacking. His time at Chelsea is officially over, and I think Thomas Tuchel announcement is imminent, but not official yet. So, of course, we're going to add in the fellow SNS football podcaster, Villa Morgan. So, you right, mate?
Yeah, you, mate?
Not bad. It's good to have you back on, and we're also going to add on. For the first time, we're going to have two Morgans on the stream. So I'm really going to have my Villa Morgan and Chelsea Morgan up to scratch so you two don't get confused. But because of the Lampard sacking, it's only right to get him on. We've got Chelsea Morgan on as well. So Chelsea Morgan, you're right, mate.
All right, how's it going?
Good, mate. Before we do talk about the big subject, and I know Villa Morgan has a few questions to pose to you as well. We will speak about sort of the done deals going across the bottom, which have happened since last time we was on. This first one really caught me by storm. Matt Ryan to Arsenal on loan. Obviously, I think we all know the standard of Arsenal's second keeper before obviously Matt Ryan got brought in. But is this not a bit of a weird one for Arsenal to bring in if anyone wants to pop up with, an opinion on this?
He dropped out of Brighton's first team as well. That's the weird one. I don't think he was there first. I was looking at what their fans were saying when they announced he'd gone. So it's weird.
It's a proper weird one. I mean,
Villa
Morgan, anything on that?
Well, I mean, he was criticised for being like one of the worst keepers in the league in terms of his shot to save ratio. It was somewhat close to Kepa's, which I find quite hard to believe. But he just wasn't really that great for Brighton. And I mean, it's such a weird one because like Arsenal have just obviously got Runnison. He wasn't even starting for Dijon. Comes in terrible. And within 6 months, he's gone. And I do question whether Runnison was actually a Mikel Arteta signing, because if he did sign him, and he's already trying to get him out the door already after a few dodgy performances in the Cup and the Europa League, you just have to look at Arsenal's recruitment yet again. They're having to bring in another keeper after just 6 months of buying another one.
Well, I don't think Runnison's left Arsenal yet, but we know what you mean in terms of he's pretty much gone. But I'm going to be honest. I actually thought when Arsenal made the decision to sell Martinez like they did, I actually thought it was a decent bit of business to offload a backup keeper, which they knew probably wasn't going to play for Arsenal because they had Leno. They offloaded him to Villa, as you know, Morgan, for was it 20 odd million, something like that. And then they bring in this Runnison for about $1 million and a bit. So, they recouped 19 million there, which was usually going to be sat on their bench. But have they really reinvested that, I guess, is the next question. But the next deal, Morgan will come, or Villa Morgan, sorry, just practicing, will come straight to you for this one. Conor Hourihane to Swansea on loan. This is a player me and Morgan, Chelsea Morgan, have loved since we had him at Argyle, captained us at Argyle, did leave to Barnsley. Yeah, burst onto the scene. He left to go to Barnsley after that, and then on to Villa. Now out on loan on Swansea, mate. Thoughts on this? Because I know you sort of rated him and thought that there was a place in the squad for him, especially the second half of this season. But do you think, in hindsight, a loan move is good for him? And especially to Swansea, you don't seem to be doing too bad.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one with Hourihane because, he was last season, he was such a key player to that midfield. He almost picked himself with sort of McGinn and Louise, but he's just fell out of the team. And when Dean Smith looks at his subs bench and just doesn't even want to bring him on anymore and would rather bring on Jacob Ramsey, you do have to question whether his future is sort of up at Villa. And I think he's a great player. His set pieces are phenomenal, which I think Swansea will really profit off. And look, he could easily do it in the Premier League. I think the Championship already, he's played a game for Swansea in the Cup and tore it up, and everyone's saying, realistically, should he have been given away by Villa? But at the end of the day, I think Dean Smith does still want him in the plans from what I've heard, but I think he wants him to go out and get football first. Because I don't think any Villa fan wants to see Connor just sat on the bench. He's too good of a player for that. And with McGinn and stuff now and sort of the progression of Villa, I've said before, I think he's just been a part of the transition. I think he's been quite unlucky. We've gone from being relegation threatened to sort of pushing top 10 this year. And I don't really think that he's going to be one that's going to be knocking on the door to start every week. So, look, I'd personally want him in the team because I rate him. But at the end of the day, it's Dean Smith's opinion. And I'm sure he'll do great at Swansea in the second half of this year.
Yeah, I think he could go into the Championship now and really have a huge influence on them, like you mentioned. We'll come back to the next one at the end because that will lead on to the main subject of this video. Willian Jose to Wolves on loan. This was a player that was linked with Atletico Madrid a lot because obviously they let Diego Costa go. Eventually they got in Moussa Dembele on loan from Lyon, but Willian Jose, along with I think Milik, were the two other names being thrown around. He's joined Wolves on loan. Morgan, I'm sure you might experience him firsthand on Wednesday when you play him, but is there any back knowledge you have of him, anything to expect of him in coming into the Premier League?
I'll be honest, I haven't seen much of him in La Liga. If you go Wolves' track record of signings, it seems to be that they know what they're doing. Their policy is quite resolute. They look at the players they brought in over recent years, all over the pitch. They've seemed to progress them, other than the odd one that needed to go back out on loan. And I just think that they're constantly going to be looking to get into the Europa League spots, the Champions League spots. So this can only be a signing that's going to really continue to push them forwards, and they need it at the moment with Jimenez possibly not ever coming back.
Yeah, good point you raised about Jimenez. He is recovering and I think back in light training, but there's always that question of if he will return or how he will return. Villa Morgan on that one as well. He's 29. We've seen Wolves always, or not always, but most of the time go for a younger signing. These young up and coming, mainly Portuguese players, but they've got in El Nouri, who's obviously French. They've got in loads of young talent. So a bit of a more experienced head to possibly lead the line, which is probably what they're missing in Jimenez.
Yeah, I think Nuno is a great manager, to be honest, and it's interesting that I've seen a lot of things about Wolves, and it seems to be that their fans are really unhappy with Nuno, and even with this signing, they're not really best pleased because obviously they don't really know a fat lot about him. I think us FIFA players out there probably know him just for that reason. So at the end of the day, I don't think anyone knows anything about him football-wise. I mean, Sociedad have had a great season so far. Doing really well. So it's got to work out for me because Wolves have been really disappointing this season, and that loss against West Brom really did show the frailties that are beginning to occur there. And look, I don't think there's a better time to play Chelsea, if I'm being honest, on Wednesday. So if he does start and he does play, he's got an amazing opportunity to get a goal and get his Premier League season kick-started, because I felt a bit sorry for Fabio Silva because he's just been thrown in at the deep end, and you can tell that he's going to get better with time. But it was a weird one in general, 35 million for a guy that's no one's ever heard of. And from Wolves' point of view, I don't think they expected him to be in as quick as he did. But yeah, William Jose's really got to come in and get things kick-started, because otherwise Wolves are just going to stay mid-table, and that European push won't really be available later on in the season.
No, you make a good point. Also, speaking of Wolves, Patrick Cutrone come back, was recalled from his loan at Fiorentina, so he's back at Wolves, and that was said for him to be in and around the first team. However, Udinese have now opened talks with Wolves to sign him after William Jose has been completed. So, do you think this is Cutrone back off? Do you think they're going to keep him because he is more of a younger striker that they can look to in the future after Jose and Jimenez, if he does return, have probably been moved on? Because, if you look at the striker spot, they've got Fabian Silva as well, who's a young striker. But is there not a place in the squad for Cutrone, or is that him gone again, do you think?
I think he could be gone again.
I think it's a must.
Because with the attacking options Wolves have, and they'll probably be looking at Fabio Silva, the big money player that they've brought in. They'll look at players like William Jose just to develop him and make him a better player, so that eventually he's the man they rely on. He's their talisman. And Cutrone, I don't think he fits into the mould that Wolves are trying to build. So he seems to do well in Serie A. They got him. I think they got him from Fiorentina initially, and then he went back on loan. So he does seem to settle. Was AC Milan. But he does seem to sort of gravitate back there consistently. So that could be where he feels comfortable and where he plays his best football.
Well, I think it was ultimately a panic from Wolves. I think they didn't know whether this William Jose deal was going to go through. And for me, it just seems a bit of a panic, like recalling him and getting him back. And now that they've got the William Jose deal over the line, they're now going, in essence, we don't actually need him anymore. So I think it was just a panic from Wolves in case the deal didn't go through or it fell through last minute and they couldn't line up an imminent replacement. So it just looks a bit messy from Wolves, really, that they've recalled someone who's now potentially going to go back on loan to someone else in the same league. Just looks a bit calamitous, really, if you're looking at how good Wolves have been recruitment-wise recently, under the new ownership since they've come up from the Championship. So, yeah, a bit of a panic, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Next up, a double bill of Arsenal departures. One we've known for about 5 days before it even was confirmed. There's Mesut Ozil to Fenerbahce. We've mentioned this, I think, on the previous live stream, but obviously it wasn't confirmed then. Whereas now, all done, all confirmed. He's already trained with them. I think Chelsea, Morgan, taking your Chelsea hat off. It's nice to see him back playing, I suppose, because I think for most football fans and probably even Arsenal fans as well, it's good to see him back playing at a club he clearly has a huge affection for as well in Fenerbahce.
He's one of the best number 10s in world football when he gets the consistent game time and when he's given that free rein. And just seeing him pushed to the side at Arsenal was calamitous for football, really, because it's a massive talent that we've seen thrive in his previous seasons at Arsenal. And they even said, Arteta said, I'm going to build my new Arsenal side around him. He's going to be my man. And that just didn't happen. So it was a real shock, I think, when he was left out of the Premier League squad. But now we can get game time. Obviously, Germany have pushed him to the side. He'll never play for them again. So we can just focus on getting Fenerbahce back to a consistent force in Turkish football in the Champions League. But yeah, it's good to see him back playing consistently.
Yeah, definitely. Villa Morgan, anything to add on the Ozil situation? I think we spoke about it last live stream. We knew it was coming, but obviously official now. So I guess would Arsenal be ashamed they couldn't get anything for him, or is it just a case of get him off the books at all cost?
I think from their point of view, I think it was just get him off the books at all costs. I think it's, like Morgan said, I think it's really disappointing the way that he has come out of the club. We are looking at a player that absolutely tore the Premier League up when he first came. And, that I still remember his goal against Ludogorets in the Champions League when he, in the 90th minute, just took it round everyone, sat like 4 players down in the box and scored. And he was such a talent. And I feel as though, there's multiple reasons as to why it hasn't worked out and what has happened at Arsenal. I think there's been a lot of debate about the whole cultural side of things and the clubs disagreeing over a culture sort of basis, and that's been the reason why he's been left out. It hasn't really been Arteta's choice, but at the end of the day, we don't really know what's been going on at Arsenal, because it has been a mess really over the last few years, and I think the disrespect that Özil gets is not really warranted. Considering it seems to me like all he's done is done the best for the club. And look, if you get put on 350 grand a week, a ridiculous wage, and people have moaned at him, said that he's just sat there on Fortnite and done nothing for a wage. But if you get put on a wage like that, are you really gonna just leave like that? I think there's just multiple things that can be culpable for something like this. But at the end of the day, he's playing his football back in Turkey now, and it seems like hopefully he can get back to the Mesut Ozil that he was before. Fitness is probably going to be a bit of an issue, but I imagine within a few months he'll be back match fit, and hopefully we can see him do well for Fenerbahce.
You mentioned the money side of things. Look at Jack Rodwell at Sunderland when they went down from the Premier League. He was only one out of the big Premier League players. He didn't have a relegation clause in his contract, so he stayed on that 70 grand.
Yeah.
And they're constantly trying to force him out the door. That he wasn't interested. I'm earning 70 grand. You're not playing me. Tough luck. I'm going to stay here and take your money.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point you raise. Another Arsenal departure, which has only just been announced before we went live, is Socrates has left Arsenal and he's joined Olympiacos on a free. I don't know whether any of you two knew that before we come live. So I guess just immediate thoughts to that, really. Chelsea, Morgan, if you want to go first on that one. They Arsenal always said this window it was more about offloading before possibly bringing in. They've got rid of Kolasinac, Özil now, Socrates now. Is there any more they have to get rid of, or is that it? And Socrates back to Olympiacos. It's not the worst move in the world for him, considering he's Greek as well.
Well, they're perennial low spenders, aren't they? They never spend big money in windows, really. I think the Aubameyang signing is a bit of an outlier for them. So they always do seem to get rid. They've got this cycle now with Arteta of they're looking to build the youth, the likes of Saka coming through. It seems to be their mould really since Arsene Wenger was in his final few days. So I think it's a good move for them, because you see since the younger players have come in, they do seem to have turned a corner and they are going the right way up the league. So I don't know offhand if there's anyone else at Arsenal that's more experienced or older that they need to either keep for that experience in the dressing room or offload, because they could turn. I think the only one from experience I know can turn is David Luiz. So possibly in a couple windows time, or even this window or the summer, get rid of him, and then they could be looking to consistently be back in the Champions League, which really for a club of Arsenal stature should be where they're aiming minimum every season.
Definitely. Villa Morgan, Socrates off the books now is, again, no money recouped apart from obviously the wages. Could Arsenal have got anything for him, or was it just another one of he's got to go at all costs, and a move to Olympiacos? Good move for him, do you think?
Yeah, he had to come off the books. I think, when he first came in, he was doing really, really well. I remember a lot of Arsenal fans saying he is the man, like he's the centre back they've sort of been waiting for. But again, he's another one that just hasn't really turned out that way. And Arsenal have got, at the moment, it seems like a bit of a settled centre-back partnership now with Mari and Holding, and Luiz sort of just flicks in and out. So at the end of the day, he hasn't played a game in a while. Another player that was, again, just picking up a wage every week. And it is progress from Arsenal, because they have offloaded now several players that have had no involvement in their first team. So you can only sort of see it now as a positive for Arsenal, and they haven't had a great season. And I think this for me, if Arteta wants to stay in the job, which I fully believe that he should do, this is one of the things that he's got to do. They've got to start being more decisive as a club, and I think it's a massive step in the right direction, getting rid of players that just have nothing to do with the first team now.
Yeah, you also got to remember they got Gabriel as another centre-back option, which they, could add in when he's sort of back fit as well, and I suppose back playing to his good standard. Chelsea, Morgan, we'll talk about this deal now because it will lead on nicely. Tomori to AC Milan on loan. I don't know whether it's an option to buy or an obligation. I believe it's an option, so I don't think it's a set in stone permanent deal at the end of it. But I didn't understand it. You didn't understand it. I don't think many people understood why this was going to go through, and even with a buy option, at the end of it. With the news today that have been broken, obviously Lampard had this reputation of bringing in young players, but the relationship with Tomori seems to have gone a bit pear-shaped. Does Tomori now have a renewed chance at Chelsea under Tuchel if he wants him, or do you think it is possibly over for him at Chelsea and he will end up at AC Milan permanently or elsewhere permanently?
I think Tomori, Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, Reece James, Billy Gilmore have all got to worry right now because they're all youth products who have been pulled through by Lampard, by Jody Morris, that were known by both of them and had a lot of faith put in them. Although Tomori was offloaded in a couple of days ago. Tuchel's going to come in, he's going to have his own ideas, he's going to have players that he trusts, and one of the players he's trusted and tried to sign is Antonio Rudiger. That leaves one other spot in the Chelsea side, Thiago Silva, and then you're looking at backups, Zuma and Christensen. I still don't think Tomori could have a shot unless this loan spell. If he wins Serie A with AC Milan and is a constant in their starting 11 and can push them through, I think they're still in the Europa League, although they might have missed out. I can't remember, but they are. So if he can push them through the Europa League, get them to have a successful season in Serie A, then possibly there is a chance of him back at Chelsea. But then you've got to say this buy option. It's only about 25 million euros. That's pocket change. So they could easily offload that if they think it's going to be worth it on a player who we have seen can be very, very good at the top level. So, yeah, the young players at Chelsea really have got to watch out because this could be going back to the days of Sarri, Conte, Mourinho, where we rely on older, more experienced players.
You mentioned Tomori there, possibly nailing down a first-team squad. Villa, Morgan, will come to you. You look at AC Milan already. They got Romagnoli. They got Musacchio. They got, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Kjaer, I think, from Denmark. There's 3 centre-backs there. Tomori added to the mix now. There's their 4. You also got to look at the likes of, they got a very good young squad. Look at Delo's on there from United, out on loan from United there. Theo Hernandez, another fullback who's at AC Milan. You go forward, they got Jens Haug from Norway, who's a young player. You look at Rafael Leao. They got some good young players. Brahim Diaz, Daniel Maldini, as we all know. Does Tomori, he's obviously going to work in this team because there's a lot of young players and obviously the outstanding experience of Ibrahimovic and Mandzukic now as well, which is also just signed. Does he nail down a first team place? Does he have to play out of position, do you think? Maybe at right back to get some games, left back? How does he fit into this AC Milan team? And do you think there will be that question of will he get enough game time?
I think he will get game time. I think you don't bring in a centre half in January if you just want him to sit on your bench. I do think he's going to get game time for AC Milan. And, I know Tomori quite well because of obviously him playing in the Championship for Derby and, when Villa were there, and he was immense. He was a fantastic player. I remember in the playoff final, he was brilliant at the back. I think it was the ball he played to Waghorn. It was something like a 60-yard. His all-round game then, I said he was good enough to be a Premier League player. And obviously, I know Morgan will know a lot more about sort of the situation at Chelsea, but I really can't understand how he doesn't get in that team. You know, I look at Chelsea's centre backs, and you know, when Villa played Chelsea, I looked at Ollie Watkins, and Watkins, I can't remember. I think it was Thiago Silva and maybe Zuma that day, and Watkins ran and ragged. And I look at a player like Tomori and his athleticism and his pace, and I think Tomori would have been perfect in that game. I think he would have matched up against Ollie Watkins really well. And I just look at players like Christensen and Zuma and Rudiger and even Thiago Silva at times, and they're just so inconsistent. I don't really see what Tomori can actually do wrong. I don't really see a world in which Tomori is nowhere near that team. And that's why I think a lot of people are suspecting a fall out there. I don't really know whether that's true or not, but at least he's going and getting his football abroad, and hopefully it's like a Sancho type thing where he goes abroad, and Bellingham as well, and does really, really well and comes back hopefully to the Chelsea team and doesn't get wasted.
You mentioned there that possibly a fallout could have occurred between him and Lampard. And as I mentioned earlier, I suppose, Chelsea Morgan, you can answer this one a bit better. Like I said, Tuchel comes in now. Is this a new chance for him to nail down a place, or not even nail down a place, but have an opportunity at Chelsea when his loan ends? Because, you know, he could end up saying at the end of his loan, however successful it is, he could go, well, look, possibly the old manager, Lampard, didn't want me, hence why I went on loan. With you coming in, are you going to give me a chance? And Tuchel could say, yeah, I'm going to give you a chance. So do you think there is, you know, that chance he could come back at the end of his loan, or do you think that is him possibly permanently gone if he does play well?
We'll have first sort of say on whether or not he goes, I reckon, because if you look at when we had Kovacic on loan for his first season from Real Madrid, we had the same option to buy, but he still went back to Real Madrid and we had to negotiate terms. So there will still be a conversation between AC Milan and Chelsea if he does want to come back. But sorry, I forgot the question, I'll be honest.
Do you think he'll get a new chance under Tuchel, which he definitely hasn't had under Lampard?
It depends on how long Thiago Silva's sticking around for. If he stays for another season, I think he could be the reason Tomori doesn't come back, because then he'll see that there's a guaranteed two players in front of him. Because I do think Tuchel will put a lot of faith in Rudiger, which you can say either way will work or won't work. But that's going to be the sticking point, I think, is whether or not we can get Thiago Silva on another year, or if he really does outperform the other centre-backs that he's with AC Milan, and he comes back and says, look, I've done it here, put me in the sides. But with the way things fell out with Lampard, he was only playing EFL Cup games. There were games where he said, this is Tomori's chance, like you said, the Villa game. This is where he can play. This is where he can shore up the back foot. And there was just never an inkling. It was always, we'll play Thiago Silva and Zuma, and we'll have one of Rudiger and Christensen on the bench. And even when one of them's injured, Tomori's never really getting the sniff. He plays against Barnsley, he played against Tottenham, and that was it. And even then, he never disgraced himself. We kept a clean sheet against Barnsley. He conceded one goal against Tottenham. So there was never a real reason to say, oh, he shouldn't be back in the squad for that. He didn't make a glaring error. He never made a glaring error, really, in any of his Chelsea performances. And a lot of Chelsea fans saw him as the potential captain of the side, or, you know, one of the ones that you can develop and mould into a Chelsea legend. And it was weird. He just went and he said, I could shine more light on what happened, whether there was a disagreement. I genuinely can't. No one knows. There was never a public disagreement. Lampard never came out and said he's never playing a game for the club like he did with Alonso, or he didn't say it with Alonso, but he sort of showed it. There was never an inkling that this has happened until we just vanished from the starting 11.
Yeah, I think the Tomori one is one to definitely keep an eye on, because, you know, obviously he's got this loan move ahead of him in Milan abroad. They're doing fantastically well, not only in Serie A, but in the Europa League. They topped their group, and, you know, I think they won most of their games. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And possibly what happens next season with Chelsea or a move away. But we'll start by talking about the big news from today. Obviously, Frank Lampard sacking. We're all well aware of this happened, a lot earlier today than we expected, or even a few days, weeks, months earlier than probably we expected. So, Villa Morgan, we'll come to you first because I know your time's a bit fine. We were actually on call at the time, and I think we were both shocked at how early this has come about, and I certainly for one couldn't believe it. I know obviously he's on a bit of a sticky wicket, but I wouldn't say it has to be sacked now. And I think your reaction was much of the same, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Lampard, he did so well last year. Everyone wrote him off. He brought through players like Mason Mount, who I think is an excellent player. And I think if Tuchel doesn't use him, I think he's stupid because, he's a brilliant player. And, Morgan mentioned about players like Tammy Abraham. I think Tammy's fantastic as well. Billy Gilmore looks a real good player, but something just hasn't clicked at Chelsea. And if you look at the season that they've had, they've been, they started the root season so well. I remember me and you speaking on a podcast and we were going Chelsea title contenders. They're going to be really up there challenging this year. And it's all sort of come crashing down. And I believe that, Chelsea fans are not really happy about this move from what I've seen. The general consensus is a little bit of disappointment. And people are even starting to question Roman Abramovich now, which I find absolutely ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I think Chelsea are in a situation where they've seen how well Man United are now doing, Liverpool, obviously City, and they're miles off it. And I think Roman probably thought, I've got to pull the trigger now rather than wait until the end of the season. Whether that's the right decision, I really don't know. But I just wanted to sort of ask Morgan about the Chelsea squad, because I see that Chelsea squad and I see an awful lot of sort of talented players, but realistically, I don't think they've been able to find the best 11 this year. Do you think Chelsea's squad is a case of just being overcrowded? And I think Lampard got sort of stuck with trying to pick his best team because he never really seemed to find it.
I don't think anyone from top to bottom knows who Chelsea's best side is. Apart from the goalkeeper, I think every other position is up for grabs with who's the best in that area. And that's been one of the issues. I've read today that from last season, we got top 4, level on points with United. It was a good season. We overachieved for what Chelsea fans and the football world thought Chelsea were going to do. All we needed, realistically, last season, replace Kepa, get a centre-back in, possibly one more striker. That was it. Maybe a winger because we only had, I think, Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi really in those positions because we knew Pedro and Willian were both going out the door. They weren't renewing their contracts. That was all we needed. And then you're seeing players, Ziyech, Werner, Havertz, they're all coming in areas where we were already pretty stacked. We already had Tammy Abraham and Olivier Giroud. We knew both of them were staying. We already had Mason Mount in the midfield position. Kovacic was in there. Jorginho, Gilmore. They were all already in there doing good. I forgot Kante. All in there doing the job, all filling those 3 midfield positions. So it was a case of you've been filled with all these players. And obviously Ben Chilwell came in at left back, but you've been filled with these players. Where do you put them? You can't fit them all in. You can't fit 4 wingers on the pitch because you're leaving 2 fullback spots out. You can't put 3 strikers on the pitch because you're leaving a centre back out. So where does the balance come in? Where do you play these players? You've paid 20, 30, 40, up to £80 million for. At the end of the day, someone's going to miss out, and it's always going to be, oh, why didn't you play this player? He could have done better there. Why is this player missing out? And it came out today. Apparently, one of the 6 signings was actually Frank Lampard signing, and that was Ben Chilwell. The others, the board recommended, and that's the main issue with being a head coach. Lampard's position, and it's very crafty for Chelsea. When you're a head coach, you don't get the final say on all the transfers. You can phone up and say, my club wants you, but you can't say to the board, I don't want him. That's the job of a manager, not a head coach. If Roman Abramovich, Petr Cech, Marino Granovskaya goes, this guy's your man, he's a sucker to it. He's got to go, yeah, okay, I want him. There's no alternative there. And I do think that shows with how we played this season. A lot of the times we've looked like 11 individuals, or a Lampard from last season's side and a Lampard from this season's side. There's never really, look at Havertz and Werner, they haven't really clicked. Ziyech hasn't really clicked. These are all players who we thought can push us not just to win the Premier League, but to win the Champions League. And it never, ever looked like progressing under Lampard, which is a shame.
You mentioned there about possibly not needing all the signings you brought in, like you mentioned, a centre-back, a winger, and possibly another striker. I look at United in the summer, obviously, like you mentioned, equal points we finished on last season, and you were bringing in all these players. When I looked at United, though, I looked at our team, our starting 11, and I thought, to be honest, all we need to improve our starting 11 is an out-and-out right winger, because despite how good Greenwood was at the back end of last season, he's not a right midfielder, right winger, so we need one of them. Obviously, Sancho was thrown about, but never happened. I think we needed a top-quality centre-back, because Lindelof and Maguire did okay, but there's always that doubt, and with Bailly obviously being quite injury-prone, you needed a real solid sort of world-class centre-half. And then possibly, a good defensive midfielder to really, nail down a position there with Matic aging. And I don't think Fred and McTominay are your traditional defensive midfielders and more energy box-to-box players. But apart from that, I didn't really see many first-team players coming into United. I think a lot of them were going to come in and be on the bench and build depth in the squad. Whereas I look at Chelsea from the team last season to now, and you look at Mendy, Chilwell, Werner, Havertz, Ziyech. There's 5 players which I think probably should all start in your team, should they have been the signings they're made out to be. Do you think it's just too many signings? Because, obviously we were level on points, and we were all, United fans were getting jealous at the signings you were making. But do you not think you were trying to play catch up with the squad you were trying to build compared to United? United's only made a couple of changes to the starting 11 with the signings, whereas you making 5 or 6 to the starting 11 has really disrupted it.
We threw the bank at it. We threw the bank at trying to get back to the top. And it's what Chelsea have done. We're notorious for spending a lot of money since 2003 when Abramovich took over. We're notorious for going out and saying, we want this player, we'll pay this much. And 9 times out of 10, we get him. This summer, with the lack of a pre-season, with the lack of any time for a player to gel in a squad, apart from maybe Werner and Ziyech who were at the club before the end of the last season, there's never going to be that chance to get more styles of play done and get to know how players play with each other. So bringing in 5 top players that are going to go straight into a start 11, it's never going to end well, because you've already got your players who have played consistent minutes last season, who are then going to go, hang on a minute, why are you letting him play when I've got the club into Champions League spots? I've done this last season. And then you're going to have the ones coming in for 20, 30, 40 million pounds and saying, well, hang on, you've paid this money for me. This is what I did last season, and I've done over the last 3 years my previous club. Why am I not playing? So then you're going to get those frictions coming in between the players at the club. And the likelihood is you don't have a successful season because you have in-house arguments. So we should have, the board should have realised what actually was needed. And it took them ages to get in what was actually needed. It took them ages to get Mendy. We started the season with Kepa. It took them a while to get Thiago Silva over the line. He was even Thiago Silva. Why not go for a younger centre back who's still got that experience, who's still got that leadership quality, but can be there for 6-7 years and to carry the team back to the top? Why go for someone who you've got on a 1-year deal possible for another year? He's a good player, but why not get someone who's going to be there for longer? And obviously we needed a left back. I get the Ben Chilwell one. Going forwards, like I've said, there's no need for the amount of players we signed in those positions. It's it wasn't. It looked like a recipe for success, and all the other Premier League sides going, "Oh, you've won the transfer window, you've won the transfer window," and even Chelsea fans are going, "This is the best transfer window we've had in years." Look at players that have come in. You look at it in hindsight, and actually, it wasn't that good because we signed too many. We signed too much quality.
Yeah, I think it's a case, and I always said this with Chelsea at the beginning of the season and like early stages. The fear I had with Chelsea is, as much as they were great signings and signings at the time which were unbelievable, I just felt it was too much being added at once, and I didn't think they were going to gel properly. And that's been the case, I think. But also a couple of your signings, which we'll probably get onto later, haven't really lived up to the hype nor the expectation. Villa Morgan, before you pop off, the floor is yours if you've got any more questions for Chelsea, Morgan. So you can take it away, mate.
I think sort of the anecdote for having a good team, in the Premier League currently, you look at all the good sides in the Premier League, they've got a settled 11. Their starting 11, if everyone is fit, barely changes. You look at Villa, I think we've made the least changes in the Premier League this season, and that's been testament to our good season. Southampton, you know who's going to play. Even Spurs, you're going to know who's played. Man United, everyone above Chelsea, if you look at that table, has a settled 11. And that, for me, is testament to why. Even West Ham have found a settled 11. They've managed to get Ben Rama in there. And look at them. They're a fantastic side. And West Ham have been a side for years that have been like Chelsea are now, where they haven't been able to find their best 11. They've struggled to get a team together. Players just constantly getting changed for no reason. Moyes has gone in there, this is my 11. I don't care. This is who I'm going to play. And I think that's what it needed. But if that is true about Lampard not wanting to sign 5 of them, what's the man supposed to do? He's got an overcrowded squad. He quite clearly wants to trust his youth players that got him to the Champions League last year remarkably and did so well. But then he's got all these new players coming in, and half of them he doesn't even want. So realistically, I think Lampard, for me, was set up to fail. I know people will turn around and go, they backed him and gave him 200 odd million. But if you're spending 200 million on absolutely, let's face it, at the moment, it looks like useless players in Werner and Havertz who haven't done anything yet. Essentially, what's the point? I hate to constantly go on about Villa, but you look at our transfer business and, we signed Emi Martinez for 20 million, Matty Cash. We did what Chelsea should have done and buy players, like Morgan said, in positions that you actually need and not just buying them for the sake of buying them. I made a joke to a mate of mine who's a Chelsea fan at the start of the year, and I said they've basically shopped on FIFA career mode. They've just looked at who's got the highest potential on FIFA and gone, yeah, all right, it'll do. It's just so weird how they did so well last year with what they've got, and they've gone, that ain't good enough. We now need 200 millions worth of players. I just find it bizarre. And I don't know what Tuchel's going to come in and do. I really don't, because he's got a job on his hands, because that dressing room is just so split, you can tell. I think watching Mason Mount, especially against Luton, I was watching him just get so frustrated at players like Werner and Pulisic, and there was points where it just looked like some of them weren't trying, and that may be one of the reasons why they've sort of got rid of Lampard, amongst other things. But I just think he was so unlucky and set up to fail, and I hate to see someone who's such a club legend there ultimately get set up to fail, because he did remarkable in his first season, and I think he deserved a lot more time. And shouldn't have had so many players bought at one time, because I think it was bizarre. You look at Liverpool and Man City, it has been quite slow processes. Man City have been known to chuck money at the wall and see if it just sticks, but just weird place, Chelsea, right now, and it needs sorting out because the way that they're going, I genuinely don't think they're going to finish top half unless Tuchel comes in and does something special.
What did you say?
It's interesting that you say set up to fail, because that's what's come through from Chelsea fans and from the board today. Is that actually if Chelsea ever lost 5 games this season, his job was on the line instantly, no matter where Chelsea were in the league, no matter what competitions it was in, he was always going to be threatened with the sack. And you say with the Mason Mount thing on yesterday's match against Luton, he looked frustrated with other players not doing their job. That was Lampard already knew before that game he was sacked. He went around after the Leicester game and he shook hands with every player. He said, "Thank you for trying your best," because he'd already been made aware that he was going to be gone. I think there was a verbal agreement with Tuchel in the following days. So given Mason Mount the captaincy was almost like a final gesture. There you go. Yeah, I brought you through and thank you for everything you've done. But it was, I mean, you say with Villa's transfer policy, where you got the players in, you got them in positions that have furthered you, and ultimately Villa could get the top 4 this season. It's done that well for them. That was all Chelsea needed. So to be in a position now where we've had to get rid of the manager, I'd like to say with Tuchel coming in, is he going to make big changes? There's 6 days left in the transfer window, so there's not really a chance to bring anyone in. There's players that he knows from Germany and PSG, because he managed Pulisic, he's managed Thiago Silva before. But other than that, putting in his own ideas, that's going to take time. I do think sticking with Lampard would have worked because, as you said, Liverpool took 4 or 5 years on the clock to get their first trophy. Pep didn't succeed in his first year at City. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's taken 2.5 years to get it right at Manchester United. And Mikel Arteta is still, you could say, isn't getting it right at Arsenal, but it is at least been given the chances to put it right and take Arsenal up the league. If he was a Chelsea manager and was in the position, if you swap the name Chelsea and Arsenal around 2 weeks ago, Arteta's out of the job and Lampard's still in a job, and that's the ultimate thing, is that there is a kill or be killed attitude in football, but particularly at Chelsea. And if there was no showing of any progression, which there hasn't been from the players, then Lampard was always going to be the first one to get the job, and that's disappointing because a lot of the people at Chelsea wanted him to succeed.
Yeah,
I think
that's interesting.
I think it spoke a lot of alarm bells. I watched N'Golo Kante when Villa played Chelsea, and he honestly looked lost. Like I think N'Golo Kante on his day is arguably the best holding midfielder in the world, and to watch the demise of him this season has been startling at times. You know, some of his performances I've never seen N'Golo Kante just kick out at people rashly, give away so many fouls. He got bullied by John McGinn for 90 minutes and got made look silly. And you look at when Villa played Chelsea, the thing that Dean Smith said that made me sort of aware of the problems at Chelsea was he actually turned around before the game and said, "We have no idea what Chelsea team's going to get put out," because the lineup changes that much, you know. He said he prepared for sort of playing Tammy up front and Giroud plays, and he said he prepared for a midfield that had Jorginho in it, and Jorginho I don't even think was in it. He made a joke about the fact he just didn't know what Chelsea team was going to turn up, and you know it's funny how a few bad results, like Morgan said, and he was ultimately going to get the sack straight away. I just think it's such a ruthless attitude, and I would have thought that with things going so right at Man United, Chelsea would have looked at that and gone, "Ollie, look, he had his rough times, he had his critics, he's got through it, we've stuck with him, he's settled the squad, he's got rid of the players that we don't want anymore, and United are now challenging for the Premier League title." For me, Chelsea fans joke about Arsenal being in a never-ending cycle, but ultimately I think Chelsea are in a never-ending cycle, and that will continue under Roman Abramovich because he isn't the type of guy to give a person time. And especially Frank Lampard. I mean, if you haven't got more of an incentive to give a man time at Chelsea, who's he going to give more of an incentive to? Because Frank Lampard, all-time top goal scorer there, icon, absolute icon at the club, and even he can't get enough time. So I think Tuchel walking into the job, I think he's a brave man, because if he doesn't do well, he might be gone by the start of next season, and then we're back at the same place that we are this season. So I just think it's madness, to be honest, and I can completely understand Chelsea fans' annoyance at this decision.
Give it 18 months, 2 years, we'll be talking about Tuchel the exact same way we've just spoken about Lampard in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's the manager merry-go-round. Ultimately, we can't get annoyed at Abramovich because it works. Frustratingly, it works. He's been at the club since 2003. We've won a Champions League. We've won Premier Leagues. We've won Europa Leagues. We've won FA Cups. We weren't doing that before he took over. So ultimately, it's a successful model. It's just not sustainable, because eventually you're going to get, well, I'm not taking Chelsea's job because I'm out of a job in maximum 2 years. That's the longest I'm going to get, really. So, yeah, it's... You said with incentive, Lampard was the one who everyone thought, this can be the guy. He breaks the model. He gets 5 to 10 years at Chelsea, and he can build his squad. He can make this Lampard's Chelsea, like Ferguson's Manchester United and Wenger's Arsenal. This can be Lampard's Chelsea, and we can see them dominate English football like the other clubs who have had sustainable management. All of a sudden, one bad patch. Let's face it, that's all it is. It's one bad patch after a 17-game unbeaten run, and he's gone. The fact that he hasn't even been allowed the chance to turn it around is, I think, what gets the Chelsea fans the most, because we didn't have a bad patch really last season, and Lampard didn't really have a bad patch in his Derby season getting to the playoffs. So this is the first time as a manager in his third season, let's not forget, third season as a manager, where he's had to figure out how to get an underperforming side and underperforming players to go the right way. Not only that, he's done it at Chelsea, where the players are notorious, no matter who is at Chelsea, for turning on a manager. And it's been, again, released today, Ødegaard and Azpilicueta had many arguments and fights over the side and French players not getting a voice. And then it comes out as well that Kepa's gone to the board saying, I don't know how we're playing tactically. I don't know how I'm going to play tactically. This is a fringe goalkeeper saying he doesn't know how to play tactically. You save the ball, you throw it or kick it to the best option. Why are you complaining about tactics? Why the fringe player got the power to go to the board to ultimately make the board go and make the final decision? It says a lot that of the players that have come out massively on social media to say thank you to Frank Lampard. It's been the youth players and Thiago Silva. They're the ones that I've seen that have been the most vocal. So really, it's the players that were succeeding under him, getting the game time, that were happy with what he was doing and could see the club going somewhere. And it's the ones that weren't getting the game time that have gone to the board and have blabbed and said, actually, we're not happy, can he go, please? So it's frustrating, because I thought we'd lost this. I thought Lampard was getting the bad players out of Chelsea, and he had a list of players this January that he wanted to get out. It was Tomori, I think it was Ødegaard, Jorginho, and there was one more, possibly Marcus Alonso. It was all players that have been on the fringes or been told you're not playing again. And they're the ones that have been able to say, we're not happy with how things are going and we want him gone. And why are players that aren't playing able to have that voice? Why are Chelsea still going like this? I thought David Luiz going. I thought with the bigger, older players going that this wouldn't happen, and has again. It's a cycle which we are stuck in. It got rid of Mourinho, our best ever manager. It got rid of Conte, who had won 2 trophies in 2 seasons. It got rid of Sarri, who won his first ever trophy. You can go to every Chelsea manager we've had. Every player has turned on them at some point. It's deep rooted within Chelsea. How do you stop that? How do you stop this managerial merry-go-round? Ultimately, it would have to come with a change of ownership. But then you go back to we've had so much success with the owner, so why would he sell? The only thing there is he's apparently been losing interest over recent years. There was talk, I think it was back in 2018, 2017, if he might want to sell the club to the guy who owns Ineos. Could this be the way Chelsea go in 2 years? Well, Abramovich goes, yeah, I've had enough. I'll Chelsea up for sale. That's the only way to stop, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you raised some good points. Got a couple comments in. Stu MC says Douglas Luiz McGinn would walk into Chelsea's midfield. Havertz would have a field day with those selfless pros as the pivot. And then he also states Tuchel with his overinflated ego won't see Easter. Now, this is something I wanted to bring up about Tuchel because he does have a bit of a track record with upsetting the people above him. Does that bode well with
PSG,
yeah, PSG? There might be one further back as well. Does that bode well for Chelsea and Abramovich with the power he's got and always sacking managers and bringing in players of his own accord as well? Surely it's not set up to be happy families.
Ultimately, Marina Granovskaya is the one who has final say on transfers and managers. She fell out with Frank Lampard, shockingly. Everyone thought she had a really good relationship with him. She also fell out with Sarri, and I think she was the catalyst in the fallout with Antonio Conte. If she can fall out with 3 consecutive managers, what's an argumentative manager going to do to her? Let's face it, this is not apparently signing until at least summer 2022 with an option for an extra year. I doubt he'll see the end of next season just because of the arguments that will happen between him and the board, and then the players they'll decide as well when it will end in tears.
Yeah, good point. We'll keep talking about Chelsea because, like I said, it's everywhere. It's the biggest news, I think, and the news we least expected. Where does Chelsea go from now? They got Tuchel in. Like we said, there's only 6 days left in the window. Is there anyone still left that Tuchel can come in and offload in these 6 days? I don't think there'll be anyone coming in these 6 days. But even if you could bring players in these 6 days, what would you bring in? Because you've got these players you brought in the summer. A lot of them need developing. Werner's not been up to scratch. Havertz has been way off it. You look at Ziyech has been okay. Thiago Silva's been all right. He's had good games and bad games. So he's got a lot of developing to do with them players. And he's got Mount, he's a young player. Abraham, Chilwell, who are all young players as well. He's got to try and find the right blend here, isn't he, of who he starts and who he doesn't. But do you see in this, even long term to the summer window, do you think there'll be any of the players you've just signed that could potentially be on the chopping board to be offloaded? Like if you look at if Havertz doesn't start performing, if Werner's not quite up to scratch, do you think Tuchel will stick by him and try and develop them, or do you think they could be on the chopping board?
Those two have got no excuse. Werner and Havertz, they have no excuse now because they're getting a manager who knows them and they know him. I know they've not played under him, but he's seen them play. He's had to manage against them in the Bundesliga. So there's really no excuse for either of them to not kick on now. I don't think anyone, and if they don't, then they're fair game in the transfer window, in my opinion. I don't care that we pay. Havertz is now a club signing. I don't care. If he's not up to scratch, he goes out the door. Same with Werner. Same with any other player in the next 6 months. Ultimately, Chelsea Football Club should be looking for top 4. Is that a big ask? Yes. Is it unrealistic? No. Look at the table. Look at the Premier League this season. It's so unpredictable. We could, with enough good results, get back in the title race. That's how close the league is this season. We're 9th, 11 points off the top. That shouldn't happen at 19 games played. So, with a good run of results, we can turn it around. I just don't know. Like you say, I don't think he can bring anyone in. There's only 6 days left. So there's not really any chance for him to go, these are my transfer targets, and the board to say, all right, these are the ones we're going to go for. And there's not really a chance for him to offload any dead wood that he wants to get rid of because he'll have tomorrow and then he's playing against Wolves and then he's got Thursday, Friday, and then there's another game. So I don't think there's any chance for him to really stamp his authority on this side in the next week. All he's got to do is And I don't even think he needs to make signings. Look at, we made about 2 signings worth of players, 2 windows worth of signings in the last window. So realistically, he just needs to find a formula that works for him, works for Chelsea, and gets them up the league. Because ultimately, that will be what keeps him in a job and gets the fans happy. Because he's got a hell of a job to get fans on side. Me personally, I'm not excited for him. I can't be excited. I idolised Frank Lampard growing up. He was I had him on the back of 3 Chelsea shirts. When I started supporting them, he was my guy. So to see him treated the way he has been, I can't. It's really hard to get excited to see a new manager come into Chelsea and do anything with this squad. He's got a job worse than Benitez had to get the fans to support him.
100%. Villa Morgan, I believe you have to shoot off, so you're free to say your bit and then pop off. We appreciate you coming on. So thanks again, mate.
No worries. It's just, I do feel for you, Morgan, to be honest, because it'd be like Villa sacking Dean Smith. Last year I was dreading it because I thought we'd get rid of him. And it would have hurt me an awful lot as well because, we've now seen the benefits of sticking with him, and he's brought sort of the whole romanticism to the club that I thought he would have brought to Chelsea, because Villa have been a bit of a chopping board in recent years. We've been stuck in the Championship. We had Di Matteo, Steve Bruce, we've had some shocking managers and who had no romanticism to the club. But what Lampard did was what Chelsea have ultimately been about over the last few years, and that's, bringing through these talented young players, bringing through the next crop of youth, and putting them and integrating them into the first team. And Lampard was quality at doing that. And I can completely understand why there's no excitement with Tuchel, because the guy has got arguably the biggest job in world football, in my opinion, on his hands right now, because Chelsea are in freefall and someone's got to stop it. Is Tuchel the man? We mentioned about him being argumentative. The thing that Chelsea need before I go is just being decisive. They need someone, and if it is Tuchel, he needs to go in there and be decisive. He may upset people, but they've got to get rid of players that are not good enough at that football club. Because I've seen Chelsea over the last few years as a bit of a hoarder club. And I think they need to get rid of players that are just not good enough and not keep players that just have a good game every now and then. They need to get rid of the players. If they want to be like your Man Cities, like your Liverpools, they don't have a weak link. They don't. And that's the reality of it. They have players that come in that are just as good as the players that have gone out. Chelsea at the moment, you just can't pick an 11 because no one's performing. So I hope it gets better for you, Morgan, because to be honest, I mean, it should really be roles reversal, because Villa are usually the ones that are in this situation and doing really bad. And at the moment, it seems to be Chelsea. So
we're even below Villa, and you've got games to land on us.
I know. If we beat Burnley as well, the top 4 charges on. But you know what,
second half this season, we're doing a title charge.
I don't know about counting my chickens on Burnley, because I'm prepared to watch 90 minutes that I'm going to fall asleep over. I think Villa will just keep me awake. But yeah, cheers guys, and I wish you all the best, Morgan, watching Chelsea for the rest of the season, because hopefully Tuchel can get it together.
We can hope.
Cheers, Villa Morgan. Cheers, Villa Morgan. I can stop calling you that now, because we're only going to have one on the stream, so you've saved me one there. But I appreciate your time as always, mate, and we'll have you back on shortly as well. If you do want to follow Villa Morgan, his Twitter will be in the description, or follow the SNS Twitter and it'll be on there. But thanks again, Morgan, mate, for coming on.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
In a bit. We'll carry on with the Chelsea sort of waffle and talk. Lampard going. There was obviously, since he took over, Arteta took over, Oli took over, there's always been this sort of race for the sack. Who's going to be the first one to go? Before Lampard before Arteta, it was Emery, Lampard, and Ollie. Emery was the first to go. Now Lampard's the second to go. I never thought Lampard would go before Arteta, to be honest. But do you think this window has put Chelsea not in a bad light, but just added too much pressure on top of Lampard? Because if you compare him to Solskjaer and Arteta's windows, you look at Arteta, we all know the situation at Arsenal and their transfer business. It's not exactly up to scratch. They got a lot to get rid of, a lot to bring in. And then you look at United's transfer window, very underwhelming at the time in terms of what we brought in and how we brought it in. You know, I think Ollie didn't get any of his main signings that he wanted. The three I can name off the top of my head: Sancho, Upamecano, and Grealish. Didn't get any of them. So we had to deal with then bringing in a Van der Beek, a Telles late on, a Cavani late on. So do you not think Lampard had more pressure because of, at the time, such a good window Chelsea had compared to not only Arsenal and United, but possibly the top six as well?
You know what I think hurt him more? Is the start to the season. We started a bit with the Brighton game and other games at the start of the season. We got Mendy in, stopped conceding, and we went on a 17-game unbeaten run. All of a sudden, we're flirting with the top of the league with Liverpool and Spurs, and everyone's going total charge, Champions League. I think that's the biggest thing that hindered him, because all of a sudden we go on this bad run, which ultimately puts us sort of where we expected to be. Okay, a little bit lower, but in the top 4 race, which is where we expected to be. But no one wanted that because they tasted being back at the top of the league, which we hadn't been since Sarri was in charge. We had that glimmer of hope. You know, well, it wasn't really good. It was staring in front of us. We slaughtered Sevilla and, you know, walked our Champions League group, which we were expected to, but we still got it done. So it was almost, he was undone by his own early season success. And it's constantly, the players just didn't seem up to scratch. Werner had his honeymoon period. You go through that and all of a sudden he's 11 Premier League games without a goal now. Yeah, he's creating chances and hitting the woodwork, and he's scored a goal that was brought up by VAR against Leicester. But ultimately, he had a glorious chance against Fulham, which he put wide. He's constantly been one-on-one and missed. Where does the goals come from? Where does the spark come from that makes you realise this isn't Lampard's fault? This is the players. I don't get it. We had everything in front of us to really go for it this season, and we're not really. After the start of the season, no one was really complaining. We weren't really upset with where we were. It was just because of that mega run we went on that everyone went, this is where we should be. If we'd stuck with winning a couple, drawing a couple, losing every now and then, no one would have complained. Lampard would still be in a job. So that's where I think that his early season success really seen him go out the door.
Yeah, I think when you start too well, if you don't keep that up, like you said, it's not good. I think looking at it from the outside in, obviously me not knowing as much as you do, being a Chelsea fan, the way I look at Lampard and Chelsea this season is, personally for me, I think Mason Mount has been your best player. I think
100%.
I think he's been, you know, the glimmering light in some of your bad performances. But when I look at where you are now, where you sit in the table compared to the situation we were in last season, just basically when Bruno signed, and I know that's a huge signing and he had as good as impact as anyone could have even have imagined. When United were in that position and we rocked up to Stamford Bridge and we did beat you 2-0, but before that game, that was a must-win game for us to get back into the top 4, or have a chance of getting back in the top 4. And I think we were, I don't think we were more than 10 points, but I think it was 6 to 10 points off of the top 4 at that stage. And if we take that now, we're at the same sort of period of the season. I know we're probably a couple of weeks out from that. But if you took that run that we went on last season and you take that into now, if Frank Lampard did that with Chelsea, if he managed to turn it around with Chelsea, with them points and that run, you'd end up winning the league this season. So I don't understand how they don't look at what other managers have done or what Lampard can do by saying, yes, okay, we're where we are now. We're only 3 points ahead of Arsenal, or however many points ahead of Arsenal, who were basically being relegated a few weeks back. But, you know, if we do win our next few games and other teams drop points, we could end up up here. But then I suppose the other downside is, well, hang on, if we carry on our poor form, we could go quite far down here because the league is not separated by too many points, especially if you look between, I don't know, if you look between second or third all the way down, there's not that much in it. Like, there's only a couple of points between it. Teams can shift quite easily depending on results. So that's what baffles me the most as to how you haven't looked at it and thought, well, yes, okay, we're where we are now, but United were in it last season. Look where they finished. And even this season, it's a lot tighter this season than last. United had huge points to gain on people. So I don't understand why Chelsea just haven't, don't want to say see it out or seen it out, but have given him that little bit more time. Yeah, stuck with him, because are they afraid that Tuchel probably could have got snapped up somewhere else?
It's interesting, you going back to the first point you made about Mason Mount being our best player. Watching the BBC coverage of the Luton game yesterday, they're going, oh, Mason Mount's in really good form. No, he's not. That's just Mason Mount. He never plays a bad game. He's not on good form. He's a class player. He never is out of bad form. He's constant. He's been the one constant all season where you've been able to go, right, who's going to have a good game today? Mason Mount. Who's going to be the one that could change the game for us today? Mason Mount. And he was one of the players at the start of the season where people are going, oh, Kai Havertz coming in, Hakim Ziyech coming in. Is he going to still get game time? Well, yes, he is, and he's going to outshine all of them. Should we stop? I ultimately look across social media, look at Sky Sports, look anywhere. Lampard should have been given more time. It's a consensus of everyone. He didn't do anything that hasn't been seen before by any other club this season. He just went through a bad patch. Look at Liverpool, the champions, the team that conquered everything over the last sort of 2-3 years after they beat City in their first title winning season. And even they're going through a bad patch. Even they're struggling to pick up results and losing games that they shouldn't do, like the Burnley one. And Klopp, I guarantee Klopp won't get sacked at the end of it. So what makes Chelsea at the moment think that we're so far above Liverpool and Manchester United and Arsenal have all gone through their struggles this season? Let's not forget United had their worst home start for ages. What makes us think we're any different that we can go, nah, sack him off, get him gone? I don't think... Ultimately, if you give him the chance, there was such a dialogue that could have been formed. He could have been the first English manager to win the Premier League. He could have been a club legend, the record signing, the record goal scorer, and got Chelsea all these trophies, all these accolades. And all of a sudden, this is the guy. He was the guy to do no wrong. So seeing him just cast aside, the only glimmer that we've been given today that he was still respected was that Roman Abramovich was involved in the club statement, which has never happened. He's never been involved in a sacking club statement before. He's always taken the back seat with that, and it's normally been Marina who has come out and said the final words. So that was something. But just to see him brush under the carpet, he wasn't even allowed back in the training ground to say goodbye today. He was just, seeing people like Jody Morris. There was upset that Frank Lampard had gone, but Jody Morris was hated today. It was like good riddance. This guy grew up a mile away from Stamford Bridge. This guy played for Chelsea, loved Chelsea, and he's just been berated by Chelsea fans, or I say Chelsea fans, that just didn't want him. A lot of them just seemed like they didn't want either of them to succeed, and I don't get it. I don't understand why we think that we're so far above other clubs that we can just chop and change so regularly, because it's not going to be successful in about 10 years' time. I can guarantee it. We'll reach the end of the merry-go-round, and all of a sudden, bigger managers will go, Chelsea's got a job for me because I want to feed my family. I want to be in a secure job to know that I can be able to further my career, win trophies, and ultimately have a retirement in 3 years.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said, I think it puts a lot of managers off because they want to build a long-term project. But with Chelsea, you're only going to get 2 years maximum. And especially if you do, I don't want to say if you do a bad job or if you have a sticky spell, you could be shorter than that. But with Lampard, you see messages coming in from Brendan Rodgers, David Moyes, Pep Guardiola, Roy Hodgson, all shocked that he has been sacked. I mean, that speaks volumes. But what is next for Lampard? Where does he go from here? Does he try and go back into management, Championship, Premier League clubs? Does he take a step back and possibly go into the punditry side of it? Because there's no doubt about it. He'd probably make a good pundit with the knowledge he's got, the tactical knowledge, the playing knowledge, just how football works. Where does he go from this? Or do you think it's more down to him? What does he want to do next?
Ultimately, Lampard's got a kid on the way. He's got I think it's his 4th child on the way. So he probably want to have some time, consider what is best for his family, what's best for him. He went into the punditry straight after he left New York City, and that was the reason he went into management, because he didn't enjoy being a pundit. He wanted to get back into football properly and see the game from the inside. That was where he felt most comfortable. On reflection, the Chelsea job was probably too soon for him. Well, there's no worry about it. It was definitely too soon for him. And it's funny, a picture re-emerged today of what Lampard said about VS Boas back in about 10 years ago, saying this job came too soon for him. It's a premature appointment. If he comes back in a couple of years, he'll be a success. And ultimately, you could swap the roles, and we could say the same thing about Lampard. If he goes away and can get experience at a club, I'm not saying that he could go to these clubs, but a club like Villa, Southampton, even like a Burnley, just get experience out of the spotlight. The Chelsea job could be coming up. Maybe he could go there and gain a bit of experience. He could win trophies, and he could come. I'm not saying he could come back. He'll want to come back to Chelsea, but he could come back in 5 to 10 years possibly, and be a roaring success and be the manager we all really want him to be. Because ultimately, he's not a bad manager. There is success. There is a passion there. There's a fight there. There's a really good tactical football man there who can extract the best out of players who you probably wouldn't expect it. So I do think give him a couple of years at another club and he could be a big success in football.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Neville, he was on Sky today, got asked if Frank did take the Chelsea job too early, and he responded with, "There's no way he could have turned it down." And do you think at that point? Do you think at that point you have to look at it and go, "Well, okay, it might have been too early for him." In hindsight, now a year and a bit down the road, it probably was too early for him. But then there's also that thing in the back of your mind that is there going to be another chance for him to get the job? And even now, is there still another chance that in however many years down the line, if he chooses to stay in management, he does come back and become Chelsea manager?
Well, ultimately, we're saying the job was given so prematurely, but let's go to the core. Why was he offered the job then? If it was too early for him, if we're saying now that it was too early for him, why have Chelsea not looked for a manager who is a bit more experienced? And I've already mentioned earlier in the podcast why. It's because it seemed to be that we wanted to change the mould. We wanted to have a manager who could stay for years and make an empire. So that's ultimately where the issue comes, is that actually he could now decide, I've been treated awfully by the board. Even if a new board comes in, even if a new regime starts at Chelsea, he could decide, actually, my time's done. I've been there as a player, I've been there as a manager. What more is there for me to do now? I guess the only thing that could entice him back is, I want to win something as a manager. I want to be the English manager who wins the Premier League. I want to be the guy who can get Chelsea back to being the superpower we were when we were winning the Champions League and the Premier League regularly. So that's what could bring him back. But I don't see there being a willingness to come back straight away. Yes, he'll take it professionally, like it's been reported that he has, but he'll want to go somewhere and make a career for himself now. He'll want to make that's what I want him to do. I want him to make his career in management. I want him to show Chelsea and the fans that wanted him gone, which was about 5% of the Chelsea fan base, I'll be honest. Show them why he was given the Chelsea job and why he is going to be successful. You're muted.
I was muted. We've got another comment here from Man United Herbert. He says Tuchel has a very touchy personality. He has fallen out at PSG and Dortmund. He had beef with Neymar and Mbappe over the racism thing at Istanbul. I think that's a huge comment, and thank you, Man United Herbert, for that, because I think it's interesting he brings that up, because obviously
that's really interesting.
That did happen in the Champions League, and sort of I wasn't aware of that, and I wasn't I didn't know of that either. So thank you for that comment. Before we start to wrap this up, we'll carry on going for about another 10 minutes or so. But Sky have said that this is a big chance now for Tuchel to build on what Lampard has already started at Chelsea this season. And like we said, let's not beat around the bush. Yes, it's not a good start to the season for Chelsea compared to where you were, but you're not out of anything. You can still be in the top four. You can still win the league. You've got the FA Cup. You're in the Champions League. I know you've got Atletico Madrid, which is a tough tie. There's still a lot for you to fight here. So, there's a huge opportunity for Tuchel to come in and be really successul within his first season.
Well, the last two times we've made mid-season changes, or big mid-season changes, one won the Champions League, Di Matteo. The other won the Europa League in Rafa Benitez. And if you go more recently, Guus Hiddink possibly had the hardest out of the three. He had the worst Chelsea side. He still got them in the FA Cup and back into the top half of the Premier League. So there's definitely a chance for Tuchel to be a success. It's really interesting, that comment, though, about how he fell out with Neymar and Mbappe. Let's face it, these are two of the best players in the world. The last time we had an argumentative manager, he won trophies, but he was gone, and it was Conte. And we knew what we were getting into. We found out, I think, in the first season, he was falling out with Diego Costa. The thought was that we'd got rid of these argumentative players, but clearly there's still some kicking about in the dressing room. So if Tuchel can't get rid of them, then I can see a very similar narrative happening, which will lead to his eventual sacking, because the players do seem to have all the power at Chelsea. They have done for the last 18 years, Roman Abramovich being at the club. So he's going to have a job on his hands to get this club going where it needs to. But if he can, he could win 3 trophies this season, realistically, because we're still in the 3 main ones that we always go for. So there's he got to the Champions League final last season, so there's a chance there. He knows how to do it. There's a chance to win the leagues. He's done that in France. Domestic trophies, again, PSG, he could win everything. It's a bit easier there because they're PSG, they've got all the money in France. But he takes Chelsea in a much better position than Lampard took Chelsea under Sarri, because he doesn't take them under transfer embargo. He doesn't take them with Eden Hazard leaving the side. He takes them with a very good squad of players that just need to be played in a way that hopefully can suit every player.
Yeah, 100%. We'll look forward to sort of the summer, because that's when you will look to do more business. Is this time for Mbappe possibly on his way to Chelsea? Is it possibility of Jadon Sancho looking positive because he managed him at Dortmund? What's the sort of what do you think long term in the summer Tuchel will be looking to bring in? And is there any serious names now you can see that could end up at Chelsea that he's previously worked with?
I reckon we're about 30 seconds away from the first PSG players getting linked with the move to Chelsea, because that's what always happens. The manager goes from one club to another and the players get linked. Concrete names that could get linked, obviously the Sancho one, he's been linked to Chelsea even before Tuchel was in charge, so that could be one that fires back up with the link there. But does he want to come to Chelsea at the moment? Possibly not. Marquinhos, I don't know if he'd be willing to leave, or Kimpembe. Either one of them. If we're going to lose a centre-back, our centre-backs, they could be ones that come in and shore us up in defence. That's the area that I think Chelsea need to work on, is the back four and goalkeeper. I don't think he'll get Keylor Navas in because we need a younger keeper. We need one that is younger but still experienced, if you get what I mean. He's still played games, but he's about 22 kind of thing. Because Mendy was, like I've said previously, we're seeing those cracks appear where he can be a bit hesitant, or like the Everton one, he just cleans out a player, bit of an experience there. Or does he stick with Mendy and let him gain the experience and get better over the years? Who knows? So there's obviously going to be players that are linked, and people are going to draw stupid things out from this time at Dortmund, this time at PSG, and you're going to go, it's never going to happen. Like Mbappe and Neymar, let's face it, they're not coming to Chelsea. We can't afford to give them what they want, even at Chelsea. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what does happen in the summer, because I can see big changes if he gets his way. If Tuchel can make his stamp in the summer, there could be a big overhaul of the squad to be his own.
Yeah, it's a good point. You obviously mentioned a keeper there, one that's young, got bags of experience. I think you don't need to look further than Donnarumma, which you've mentioned before. But also, I don't think Tuchel did manage him at Dortmund. But a player you did get linked with is one of the best goal scorers, I think, in the world at the minute, and that's Erling Haaland. Is that even a possibility, do you think? Obviously, there's no connection there, just a little bit short of the time frames between Tuchel being at Dortmund and Haaland being there now. Is that one, or do you think that's the Haaland one's not going to happen and Donnarumma could be one that's quite possible? Well,
that was one that started sort of as Lampard was coming to the end of his time, this Haaland's rumour. I don't even know where it started from, but it's probably Chelsea fans and plucking it out of thin air. But it's one that could happen. I do think Tuchel will have a decent amount of willingness for players to play under him because of what he's done with the PSG sides. It'll just be a case of Erling Haaland, can I see it? Not at the moment, because we've still already got 3 strikers. He'd have to get rid of 2 of them, in my opinion, and I can't see 2 of them that he gets rid of. The only one I could see that he might want to offload, which he'd be daft to, is Giroud. Other than that, I can't see him get rid of Werner, and I can't see him getting rid of Abraham. Definitely not Abraham, because he's consistent. He's made something like 47 starts and been involved in 41 goals. Been involved some way in 41 goals in those starts. So he's one of the most consistent players at Chelsea. So there's no way he goes for me. There's no way Werner goes in the summer under Tuchel, I don't think, because I do think Tuchel will get him firing. And then it's Giroud. He's a classic professional. You know, he stuck with Lampard even when he wasn't playing him, never turned on him like Rudiger has, never wanted him gone, always played well and scored goals when he started. So I don't think Haaland will be coming to Chelsea this summer.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a
pipe dream.
Yeah, I think it's a dream for a lot of clubs. Even United has won with that Ollie and Mulder link as well. So, but I do think him and Mbappe are Real Madrid bound at some point. Before we finish up on Chelsea and another transfer news, we've got a comment here from Jack Douglas. Thoughts on Rangers dominating Celtic? It's lovely. I love it, mate.
It's very good.
If you've seen previous streams, I've worn a Rangers shirt in the past, so I'm having a great time watching it. So yeah, big up the Jers, and hopefully they can.
Not seeing on the side at the top of the SPL.
Definitely. Hopefully they can keep hold of that lead. I think if they do blow it, on one word, it'd be something else, to tell you that.
Be a catastrophe.
Oh, unreal. We'll finish on Chelsea and sort of the rest of the season. Realistically, as a fan, what do you want Chelsea to do now so that you can look at the back of this season and say, look, we've had a bumpy season, but we've done well this season. What did Chelsea have to achieve in the League, FA Cup and Champions League for Chelsea fans to look back and go, yeah, we had a decent season considering the managerial change. We still had a very good season.
So if we go competition to competition, Premier League, we have to get top 4. Have to. It would be criminal if we miss out. Again, I hate the Europa League. I hate watching football on Thursday night. So we have to be back.
It means a lot.
Oh, it's awful. I can't believe clubs are in that competition.
Biggest European competition I am.
So yeah, top 4. I don't know where in the top 4, but as long as we're there, FA Cup, we have to win it for me. I think the FA Cup is one we have to go for. With Liverpool out now, I don't think City are interested in it. I knew that would get you happy. So I don't think City are interested in winning the FA Cup. I think their priority, like it always seems to be known, is the Champions League. I think United will prioritise the Premier League now with how that's going for them. So ultimately, there's the path for Chelsea. Go and take it. And then it's Champions League. If we can get past Atletico Madrid semi-finals, realistically, I think that was what I said at the start of the season under Lampard. I don't think that changes under Tuchel. We've still got about a month before the Champions League round of 16 matches, so we have got time for things to turn around in the league and potentially be in a rich vein of form going into those 2 matches.
Yeah, I think the FA Cup's an interesting one. I think you've got, I don't want to say an easy draw, but you've got Barnsley in the next round. You played Luton and you played Luton and Morecambe beforehand as well. I think you've had a little bit of an easy ride. So you're deep into it already. You expect to beat Barnsley. So I think, with Liverpool being knocked out, like you mentioned, there's a few ties which, could knock out a few of the big boys. We've got West Ham, which is no easy game. So there's a few sticky ties in there, but I think United, obviously Premier League is the bread and butter at the minute. You're doing so well in it. You can't take your eyes off it. And then elsewhere for me, I just want to win another trophy because, of course, I'd love to win the Premier League, but still it's a distant dream at the minute. I think, talk to me again 25, 26 games in, and if we're still top of the league, then I'll say, right, we're really in for this now. So
you've always got to think Liverpool and City are going to turn it around, haven't you? They've been so consistent in the league the past 3 or 4 years that you've got to think and City are actually clicking. I think they're only 2 points behind you with a game in hand. So there is always going to be that pressure that other sides can come back.
Exactly. I think City's the main one at the minute. I think Liverpool, even watching them against us, I know they scored twice, but I wasn't overly impressed by them, to be honest. And that's not me being biased at all. No. If Liverpool had come out and narrowly lost 3-2, I'd have been like, fair enough. But, there's parts of their game where you just watch it and think, this is not the Liverpool that blew the league away by storm last year and won the Champions League a year before that. So I think there's a lot of change needed in that squad, and it'd be interesting to see what happens with a lot of their players if they do move on, and what goes on there. But that will be the end of sort of the Chelsea talk. Morgan, I appreciate you coming on. I know it's been a bit of a up and down day for you. I don't think any of us expected that at the start of the day.
It's been all down. There hasn't been a lot of positives today, I'll be honest.
No, I appreciate your time, though, and appreciate you speaking. Before we go, a transfer news, which we will talk about. Fortunately, it's the red side of London. Martin Ødegaard is off to Arsenal. I think it's all but done. Me and Villa Morgan and other people have been saying Arsenal are screaming out for an attacking midfielder. Coutinho was being chucked around, never going to happen. Draxler was being chucked around, it went off the boil. Brandt probably looked the most likely, but I think Witsel picked up an injury. Buendia then looked even more likely, but Norwich obviously on their way back up said there's no chance of it happening. So you think the attacking midfielder dream is dead, and then lo and behold, Ødegaard wants to leave Madrid on loan, and Arsenal have swooped in and got a good deal, in my opinion. I mean, apart from the fact he's playing for Arsenal, I'm really looking forward to see him in the Premier League, because as a United fan, I don't know who it was against or how it happened, but when certain clubs overseas come and have sort of trial periods at United, they bring their players over, they train with United players, etc., etc. They play in matches with United Academy players. There was a time where Ødegaard played with Rashford in a friendly or whatever, and they both were apparently in that game unbelievable and really linked off each other and was special to watch. So as a United fan, if there was ever a chance to sign him, I'd love for us to go in for him. But Arsenal 6-month loan, attacking midfielder, they're screaming out for it, bit of creativity. I don't think he's going to stay past the 6 months. And do you think, how big of an impact do you think he can have on Arsenal? Do you think it's as similar to Bruno not in terms of he could get them top 4, but because they're lacking in that area like we was with Lingard and Pereira, just bringing that bit of quality in could propel them so far up the league.
His record speaks for itself, and I don't mean that in a good way. He doesn't seem to go to places and thrive instantly. It seems to take a while to bed in, and when you're on a 6-month loan, you haven't got bedding in time. You have to be in and a success straight away. So I don't think he'll be as influential as Bruno Fernandes was to Manchester United. I don't think he's the quality of player to be that influential because he's bounced around so many clubs that he hasn't. But like Bruno Fernandes before he went to Manchester United had been so stable in the Sporting Lisbon 11 that he was already match fit going straight in. I think Ødegaard's been on loan at Real Sociedad so far. Was it Sociedad this season? So he's already been
at he went to Vitesse. He went back. He was at Vitesse for one point. He went to Herrev. I can't pronounce them. The Dutch team, Herenveen or something. He's been at Sociedad. He's been at Sociedad. That was meant to be a 2-year loan, but they cut it. Madrid in the summer and opted for him to stay this season. But due to game time, he's left again.
I don't see him because he was signed as this boy wonder and this guy who was going to propel, going to be another Galactico, be the guy to take it Real Madrid forwards. But you can see with their signings, they don't have faith in him because they wouldn't have signed Eden Hazard and they wouldn't be linked with Kylian Mbappe if they had this much faith in this guy. So there's a reason that he bounces around the loan system. There's a reason the clubs he's on loan at don't want to keep him. And I do feel like we'll see that firsthand in the Premier League now. I
think Sociedad wanted him back on loan now when this opportunity arose, but I just don't think they could have got it done because, to be honest, he did have a good season at Sociedad last year. I think that's been probably the pick of his loan spells. I can't remember if he went to Vitesse first. It was Herenveen or whatever they're called, where he did well, or if it was Herenveen first, it was then Vitesse where he did well. It was that second loan spell where he actually started to pick up, but then Sociedad is where he really hit it well when Real Madrid thought, oh, well, we better keep in because he had a cracking season. But, past this 6 months, the lack of game time, like he's mentioned, and the reason he's left, is he permanently off, or do you think there is still a place for him in that Real Madrid squad? And if he is off, where does he go?
Depends how this 6 months goes. Like the Tomori one, it depends how he goes. Possibly he could go back to Arsenal, if they're happy with him, if he can be the guy to get them going. Like I said, they're weak in the attacking positions. I can't really even right now think Saka possibly, and then I'm really struggling to think of players.
Smith Rowe, Lacazette, Aubameyang.
Well, Aubameyang's more of a striker, Lacazette more of a striker, but naming like Smith Rowe, Martinelli, these are young players. That's a lot of pressure to whack on them to get this Arsenal side back to where it should be. So I do think he could come in and be their saviour almost, the guy they've been screaming out for. And I kind of hope he can be because he's been around so long that you sort of want him to succeed. You want to see him do well. And if he does, then obviously Arsenal's an option, Real Madrid's an option. If not, if Sociedad still want him, he can go back there. But if he does well in the Premier League, so many people watch the league and it's such a diverse league that he could the world would be his oyster at that point and he could decide, he could have a pick of where he wants to go if he does well enough. I think it's all on his shoulders now to make the most of this loan spell.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. He's playing in the best league in the world. He's got, a huge challenge ahead of him at Arsenal. If he does well, Ollie may need to use his Norwegian connection and get him in. But I think that will wrap it up. But Morgan, appreciate your time. As I mentioned earlier, I know it's been a bit of a tough day for all Chelsea fans, so I do appreciate you coming on. We will have you on again soon. Before we go, and Morgan, like I said, appreciate you coming on. The Twitter is on the channel and it's on previous streams as well. Just type in SNS Football Podcast on Twitter. We will be doing a poll on the Twitter for Deadline Day because we're planning on doing a big show for Deadline Day. We just want to know what time you guys would like to watch it because we don't know whether to go into midnight when the transfer window closes or do it a bit earlier on. So there'll be a poll on our Twitter. So please get involved with that and let us know what you want to do in terms of deadline day, because we've got a big show planned for that. But Morgan, once again, appreciate your time and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Get subscribing, get following these guys. They do good stuff. So yeah.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it a lot. Morgan's Twitter will be in the tweet we do after this as well. Villa Morgan's Twitter is in the tweet as well. Once again, if you have watched the video or the live stream and you have enjoyed the content, as Morgan said, please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We do appreciate your time. In the comments, do list anything you want us to talk about, transfer news, football news in general, scores, anything. Please do let us know. If there's any news you want on your team that we can try and find, we will have a look for you. So appreciate your time. On the road to 50 subs as always. I think we're on 35 now, so if we can get another 15, that would be cushy. So appreciate your time, everyone. Once again, Morgan, thanks for your time, and we will see you in the next one. Make sure you follow the Twitter so you know when we next go live. Thanks for watching, everyone. Peace.